Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewing port of the Endeavour, humanity's first true starship to reach the beating heart of the galaxy. Before him floated Nexus Prime, a station so massive it defied imagination. It glittered like a jewel against the dark ocean of stars, crystalline towers stretching for hundreds of kilometers. It looked less like something built, and more like something grown out of starlight itself. Beside him, Dr. Lisa Grant adjusted her tablet, scrolling through cultural briefing notes they had studied for months. She whispered, almost reverently. "Hard to believe we're actually here. The first humans, standing on the threshold of the Galactic Confederation." Jake nodded slowly, watching the smaller vessels swarm around Nexus Prime like schools of fish. Each ship represented a different species, some mechanical, some biological, and others that looked like living storms of pure energy. Humanity had wondered for 3 centuries whether they were alone. Now, they knew. They weren't the first. They weren't even the 100th. They were the latest members of a club that had existed for over 10,000 years. The comms crackled alive. "Human vessel Endeavour, this is Nexus Prime Traffic Control. Adjust heading to Docking Bay 77 Alpha. Ambassador Thar will meet you upon arrival." "Acknowledged," Jake replied. He turned to his navigator. "Pete, take us in." "Smooth and steady, we want a good first impression." Chief Engineer Pete Collins grinned. "Don't worry, Captain. I've been practicing this docking for weeks." As the Endeavour glided in, Lisa reviewed her notes one last time. The Confederation was unlike anything humans had imagined. A peaceful alliance where war had been extinct for millennia. No armies, no weapons, no conflict. Disputes were solved through dialogue, meditation, or by consulting the ancient wisdom of the Council Primes. Every species contributed freely, sharing knowledge and resources. They had achieved what humanity always dreamed of, true, lasting peace. The docking clamps locked, and moments later Jake and Lisa stepped into Nexus Prime's shifting corridors. The walls themselves seemed alive, projecting art from 1,000 civilizations. The air was laced with subtle fragrances from alien flora that no human botanist had ever catalogued. Beings moved gracefully around them, creatures that walked, floated, slithered, or phased in and out of reality. At the reception hall, Ambassador Thar awaited them. Tall, reptilian, his emerald scales caught the artificial sunlight like liquid glass. His golden eyes radiated intelligence, and, to Jake's surprise, warmth. "Welcome, humans," Thar said, voice carrying a musical hiss. "I am honored to serve as your guide. The Confederation has waited long to meet your species." "The honor is ours," Jake said, extending a hand in the human greeting they'd carefully selected. Thar studied the gesture for a moment before clasping Jake's hand in his clawed grip. His eyes brightened. "Fascinating. Your kind signals peace through touch. Most civilizations use thought or energy resonance." Lisa stepped forward. "We're eager to learn, Ambassador. Humanity has much to offer, and even more to discover." Thar led them through the station as he explained Confederation society. "There are no armies. No weapons. Harmony is preserved through understanding and shared purpose." But then his tone shifted. "Your preliminary reports were intriguing. Some council members found aspects of your history concerning." Jake tensed. "Concerning?" Thar's golden eyes studied him carefully. "You documented something called warfare. The concept is alien to us. You describe organized violence between your own species, lasting for years. Some fear this reveals a flaw in human development." Lisa exchanged a look with Jake. They had expected this. "War is part of our past," she said calmly. "Humanity has known global peace for over 2 centuries. But you maintain military fleets," Thar pressed. "Your ships carry weapons. Your academies still teach combat. Why preserve such things, if peace is your truth?" Jake breathed deep before replying. Because peace isn't guaranteed. We learned the hard way that preparedness is not the opposite of peace, it protects it. Order through the threat of force, Star mused. A paradox. To us, harmony exists without such shadows. They soon entered the Grand Council chamber, a vast sphere where hundreds of species gathered. Some hovered in light, some glowed with energy, some radiated music. At the center floated Council Prime Veltara, a being of pure radiance who had guided the Confederation for 3,000 years. The induction ceremony began. Species after species performed their greetings, songs, dances, telepathic impressions of entire histories. When humanity's turn came, Lisa stepped forward. Honored beings of the Confederation, she said. Humanity comes before you with open hearts. We offer our science, our art, our unending drive to explore. A hologram bloomed, Earth's great cities, human art, the science that had unlocked faster-than-light travel. The council murmured with interest. But then, the hologram shifted. Humanity's wars filled the chamber. Battles. Soldiers. Mushroom clouds of violence. The chamber grew uneasy. Minds whispered in tones of alarm. Council Prime Veltara's voice entered every consciousness at once. The humans show promise. But their violent instincts concern us. No other species retains such knowledge. Are they truly ready for membership? Jake stepped forward, refusing to remain silent. Council Prime, we chose peace not because we lacked the capacity for war, but because we learned it was worse. Our capacity for mercy balances our strength. Veltara's radiance dimmed. A noble sentiment. Yet you remain unique in keeping the tools of destruction. We cannot ignore this. The debate raged for hours. Some species rejected humanity entirely. Others argued their achievements proved evolution beyond violence. Finally, Veltara gave judgment. Humanity will receive provisional membership. You will settle the outer rim, far from the core. We will watch your progress. As the humans departed, Star walked beside them. His scales shimmered with thought. Many here think your warrior instincts are primitive. But I wonder, perhaps we have forgotten something important. Jake frowned. What do you mean? Star lowered his voice. Peace is beautiful, when all choose it. But what happens when something does not? The words lingered in Jake's mind. For in the depths of the void, something ancient was already stirring, something that would soon test not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. Humanity's provisional membership in the Galactic Confederation was not the triumph Earth had imagined. Instead of settling lush worlds near the galactic core, they were sent to the outer rim, a region of scattered stars and unclaimed systems, far from the shining heart of civilization. Officially, the Council said it was an opportunity. A chance for humanity to prove themselves by developing neglected frontiers. But to many humans, it felt like exile. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Endeavour as their fleet descended upon Epsilon 3, a rocky but habitable world orbiting a dim orange star. Below them stretched an untouched wilderness, forests older than human history, mountains sharp as teeth, and oceans shrouded in silver mist. Beside him, Dr. Lisa Grant whispered what they were both thinking. Beautiful, but alone. No allies, no neighbors. Just us. Pete Collins chuckled. Better than being under constant surveillance at the core. Out here, at least we can breathe. And perhaps that was true. Humanity began to build. Modular cities unfolded across the plains, powered by fusion and nanotech. Terraforming crews reshaped barren valleys into fertile farmland. Children were born under alien suns, their laughter the first human voices these worlds had ever heard. For a time, it felt like a new beginning. A frontier spirit, exploration, resilience, the same determination that once carried humanity across oceans on old Earth. But the Confederation never stopped watching. Every report humanity sent back was scrutinized. Council auditors demanded proof that no weapons were being developed. Entire shipments of mining equipment were delayed for inspection. Star, the reptilian ambassador, visited often, reminding Jake and Lisa that many still doubted humanity's ability to live without conflict. One evening, as the twin moons of Epsilon 3 rose over the settlement, Lisa confided her frustration to Jake. They don't trust us. They see every act of self-defense as aggression. Every drill as preparation for war. Jake stared at the horizon. Maybe they're not wrong. We still carry scars from our past. But Lisa, something tells me it's not us they should be afraid of. That something came sooner than either expected. It began with whispers. Miners on the edge of the rim reported vanishing outposts. Stations that stopped responding, their signals cut mid-broadcast. Search ships found nothing but drifting wreckage, metal torn and twisted as though chewed apart. At first, the Confederation dismissed it. Accidents. Structural failure. Perhaps even pirates. But the reports grew. Entire colonies erased overnight. No distress calls. No survivors. Only silence. Jake was summoned to a council session on Nexus Prime. When he arrived, he found the chamber buzzing with unease. Even the elder races, those who claimed to have forgotten fear, seemed shaken. Ambassador Thar intercepted him. His scales were darker, his eyes tense. Captain Morrison. The council is troubled. The disappearances are spreading. Jake folded his arms. Then send a defense fleet. Isn't that what you do? Star's voice grew quiet. There are no fleets. The Confederation has no armies. Nothing to fight with. Jake froze. He had known war was forbidden, but hearing it so plainly was different. You mean to tell me, if something out there is hunting colonies, you have no way to stop it? Star's gaze held his. We believed nothing remained that could threaten us. But these signs, they echo an old story. One I thought was only legend. Before Jake could press further, the Council Prime addressed the chamber. Veltara's radiant form pulsed with unease. The rim trembles with an old hunger. Long ago, our ancestors spoke of the Devourers, a force that consumed without reason, without pause. But we thought them myth. Now, we are not so certain. The chamber filled with murmurs, telepathic waves of alarm. Lisa, seated among the delegates, spoke firmly. If this threat is real, then you cannot face it with words and philosophy alone. You need preparation. You need defense. The council reacted with horror. Weapons. War. Such things are forbidden. Jake stepped forward, voice like steel. And yet the Devourers don't care about your rules. They don't ask permission. They consume. For a long silence, no one answered. The Confederation, 10,000 years of peace, had no concept of response. They were a civilization that had forgotten how to fight. But humanity hadn't. Back on Epsilon 3, Jake convened with his crew. The news of the Devourers weighed heavy, but Pete Collins was already sketching plans on his holodisplay. We still have our old designs. Fusion cannons, kinetic shields. They may not want us to build them, but we'd be fools not to. Lisa frowned. If the council finds out. Jake cut her off. If the Devourers arrive first, there won't be a council left to complain. So, in secret, humanity began to prepare. Old defense doctrines were revived. Orbital shipyards built vessels that officially were survey craft, but in truth carried hidden armor and railguns. Colonists trained not just in farming and science, but in discipline and tactics. It was a gamble. If discovered, the council might expel humanity completely. But the alternative, trusting peace to hold against an enemy that only consumed, was unthinkable. One night, under the alien stars, Jake stood alone on a cliff overlooking the settlement. Star appeared beside him, scales reflecting the twin moons. "You are building weapons," the ambassador said quietly. Not accusing, not angry. Simply stating fact. Jake met his gaze. "We are." Star was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke words Jake did not expect. "Good." Jake frowned. "Good?" Star's golden eyes narrowed. "The council has grown complacent. They forgot that the galaxy is not kind. Perhaps, humanity remembers what we have all forgotten." A cold wind swept across the rim. In that moment, Jake understood, humanity's exile had not been punishment. It had been positioning. Out here, far from the protection of the Confederation, they would be the first to meet the darkness. And the darkness was already moving. Somewhere beyond the rim, in the void between galaxies, the Devourers stirred. Not myth. Not legend. Real. And hungry. The first Devourer sighting was not a battle. It was an ending. An outpost on the edge of the rim, a small Confederation research station orbiting the gas giant Helios, sent a single message before the signal cut. Just 3 words, carried across the void. "They are here." By the time a response fleet arrived, there was nothing left. No station, no debris, not even dust. As if the structure had been erased from existence. The Confederation gathered in fear. Civilizations that had known nothing but peace for millennia struggled to even name what they had witnessed. But to humanity, the signs were familiar. The jagged consumption. The silence. The precision. Predators. On Epsilon 3, Captain Jake Morrison convened his crew in the underground command chamber. Around them, holomaps glowed with red markers spreading across the rim. "They're advancing faster than the Council admits," Lisa said, her voice steady but strained. "Colonies are disappearing in clusters now. If this continues, they'll reach the inner sectors in less than a decade." Pete Collins slammed a fist against the table. "And what are the counselors doing? Meditating? Writing poetry while entire worlds vanish?" Jake's jaw tightened. "They're paralyzed. They have no weapons, no armies, no will to fight." He looked at the faces gathered around him, scientists, engineers, soldiers who had become farmers and builders, and then soldiers again. "That leaves us." A silence settled over the chamber. Not despair, but something colder. Determination. In secret, humanity unveiled what they had built. The Endeavor was no longer alone. From the hidden shipyards of Epsilon 3 rose the Vanguard fleet, sleek, angular vessels armored in titanium composites, powered by fusion cores that glowed like newborn stars. Railguns capable of piercing kilometers of steel. Point defense webs that could shred incoming swarms. Shield systems designed to bend physics itself. Officially, they were long-range exploration craft. But their crews knew the truth. They were weapons. Humanity's first true navy among the stars. Lisa ran her hand along the armored hull of the Dauntless, one of the new flagships. "We swore we wouldn't repeat Earth's mistakes," she whispered. Jake, standing beside her, answered quietly. "We didn't. We didn't build these for conquest. We built them for survival." The Council was horrified when they found out. In an emergency session on Nexus Prime, ambassadors shouted accusations. Violation of peace accords. Warmongering. Proof humanity is too dangerous to be trusted. But then the holograms arrived, raw footage from a Harari scout vessel that had barely escaped the rim. The Devourers were no longer whispers. They had form. Vast, biomechanical leviathans that moved like living storms, consuming asteroid fields and moons as though they were fruit. Their shapes shifted, serpentine tendrils, insectal limbs, maws of endless teeth. No two looked alike, yet all carried the same hunger. The chamber fell silent. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Confederation saw an enemy that could not be reasoned with. And Jake's voice cut through the silence. You see now. Peace is not a shield. Words are not enough. The Devourers are coming, and if you will not fight, then humanity will. The first battle came at Delta Lyra, a fledgling colony near the rim. The Devourers descended in a tide of chitin and steel, stripping orbital defenses in minutes. Civilian transports fled into the void, but they were slow, fragile, and the swarm was fast. Then the humans arrived. The Dauntless, Endeavor, and 5 escort frigates dropped from FTL in a blaze of fusion light. Targeting locks acquired, Pete Collins reported, hands flying across his console. Rail batteries online. Jake stood at the command dais, calm but burning inside. Fire. The void erupted. Slugs of hyperdense metal streaked across the dark, tearing through the Devourers' outer husks. Plasma lances followed, carving molten scars into their flesh machines. The swarm howled in frequencies that rattled the bones of every living thing. But for the first time in recorded history, the Devourers bled. Lisa clutched her console, eyes wide. It's working, my God, it's working. The battle raged for hours. Human ships moved in disciplined formations, shields flaring under impacts, point defense webs shredding incoming drones. Losses mounted, 2 frigates gone, hundreds dead, but when the last Devourer husk fell silent, drifting lifeless into the void, the impossible had been achieved. Humanity had won. The Confederation did not know how to respond. Civilizations that had forgotten the meaning of war looked at humanity with both awe and terror. Whispers spread across the inner worlds, the humans have awakened something. A memory of fire. A will to resist. Star, the reptilian ambassador, met Jake after the battle. His scales were dull with exhaustion, but his voice carried something new. Respect. You have done what none of us could imagine. You stood against the hunger, and you endured. Jake shook his head. This was only one battle. They'll be back. Stronger. Star inclined his head. Then perhaps your exile was never punishment. Perhaps it was preparation. In the weeks that followed, humanity's role changed. No longer an exile people on the rim, they became the shield of the Confederation. Their ships patrolled the frontier. Their engineers taught old races how to build defenses. Their children grew up knowing that survival was not guaranteed, but it was possible. And slowly, the galaxy began to awaken. Worlds that had long abandoned the notion of armies now whispered of training again. Races that had hidden from violence began to study the human way of survival. Not for conquest, not for glory, but for the preservation of all. Lisa wrote in her journal one night as their fleet drifted between stars. Perhaps this is what it means to be human. Not to conquer, not to rule, but to remember what others forget. To stand when others fall. To fight when the galaxy trembles. And to endure, not for ourselves alone, but for all who cannot. But beyond the frontier, in the cold silence between galaxies, the Devourers stirred in greater numbers. What humanity had faced at Delta Lyra was only a fraction, a probing claw. The true swarm had yet to arrive. Jake watched the stars from the Endeavor's bridge. He thought of Earth, of the long path that had brought them here. From a single blue planet, to exile, to war. And he whispered words no counselor dared speak aloud. We will not go quietly. Not this time. Because humanity had not simply survived. They had reminded the galaxy of something older than peace, older than fear. The will to fight for tomorrow. And the war for tomorrow had only just begun.